Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Really excited to have my buddy Gino on today. I had him on the podcast about a year ago or so ago, and always enjoy our conversations, and we have a lot in common. We're trying to get off the grid here. He bought a farm, I bought a ranch, and we're talking about how that's our happy place, right? So anyway, we're going to be talking about money and financial legacy and stuff like that today. And both of us are probably at an age where we think more about that. So depending on your age, maybe you're there, maybe you're not there yet, but hope you enjoy the ride. So Gino, what's up, buddy?
Mike, I'm doing good. And as everyone's listening to this, Mike's saying that we're a little bit older than maybe the average listener would be, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't still abide and really discuss Stephen Covey's principle, think with the end in mind. Yeah, I don't know if I ever thought that I'd buy a farm, but I thought with the end in mind that I wanted some kind of financial security for my family. I wanted a lot of kids. So how did that happen? So if you're listening to this right now, you may be nowhere near retirement, but what does that look like 20 or 30 years from now? And then let's reverse engineer that. And what do you need to do today to be able to get to the point where Mike is right now, driving on a tractor, having fun? I mean, you got to plan today to be Mike 20 years from now, right, Mike?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've done over the past 13 years, I've done over 1,500 video podcasts and interviewed a lot of people, talked to a lot of people. I'm a networking, I love the network. I love to meet people like you, Gino. And the single biggest regret, if I ever ask people, like, what's your biggest regret? It's always they wish they'd started earlier in real estate, typically. Yes. But obviously, same thing for investing. Like, time goes by fast, and time is the biggest resource you have if you have it, right? And so when you're starting early, even if you are a little bit older and you could instill these things into your kids, because I mean, I can tell you, my kid, my son is 17. He doesn't listen to my podcast, so he's not going to hear this, but he doesn't know. He has self-directed IRA accounts. He's got a whole bunch of accounts he doesn't even know about, right? And so I didn't have those things until I was like 40. Anyway, here we are. So Mike, we're going to talk about, money. Like, you kept using this phrase, happy money. I know you got a new book out too, Happy Money. And I know I want you to extrapolate on it, but I know there's people that have a bunch of money and they're mad at the world and they're not happy and they are grinding themselves to death. And there's people that have money and they can find their happy spot. So what does money mean to you?
Before I answer that question, I want to challenge everybody. Are you working hard for your money, or is your money working hard for you? When you answer that question honestly to yourself, like I did back in 2008, man, I was grinding for money, but my money was sitting there and not working hard for me. That's when I realized, and the reason why this thought came to my mind was you're talking about, hey, you've got to compound. You've got to start earlier. And for you to start earlier, you need to get your money to start working for you. It's one thing that you need to work hard. There's no 4-hour work weeks when you start out. That's a bunch of nonsense. Yeah. But you need to work hard. Then you need to work smart, right? We need to put both of those together, and you need to make your money work. Now, when I wrote the book, Happy Money, Happy Family, Happy Legacy, I had interviewed Ken Honda. He is the original happy money guru guy. And he says to me in his Japanese accent, Gino, you need to write happy money, happy properties, happy family. I'm like, dude, not another real estate book. But I loved his concept of happy money because for many years, it resonated with me that money doesn't make you happy. That's not the title of the book. That has nothing to do with it. What makes you, me, and I think everyone listening to this podcast happy is autonomy. To be able to say to myself, I'm going to do 250 podcasts this year. I'm going to buy a 100-acre farm because I can. I have the ability to do that. I have the optionality to do that. And that's what makes us truly happy. Now, money is just the result. Now, for me, happy money is getting on these podcasts, being able to say to myself, hey, I can start a company with my family to help other families become more connected. Unhappy money, conversely, is being stuck in a job that you hate. You need to go to work, you need to buy this duplex, but you really freaking hate it. And it's draining, it's fearful, it's negative. And how many of you out there listening have been there or maybe be there right now? We've all been there. I had a restaurant for over 20 years. The first 10 were great. The last 10 sucked. I was embroiled in happy money. I was really fearful. I was really scarce. And until I started getting into multifamily, until I started working on personal development, until I started getting on these types of shows and podcasts, that's when I started finding my happy money and the paradigm. One last example. I gave the book to my landscaper last week, and he was sort of baffled. He's like, "You write books?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. There's so many people writing books." And he's like, "What's this happy money?" So he gets 15 pages into it. He's like, "I only read 15 pages, and it took me an hour." And it's really thought-provoking because he's like, "Gino, now I understand my electric bill is happy money." And what he meant by that was, hey, you could look at a bill and be really pissed off about it, but how amazing is it that we've got electricity? It's just the way you're looking at things. And I think if you could take a bigger or a different approach to the way you're looking at things, life completely changes, Mike.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm reminded of there's two things I thought of when you were talking there. Is a good friend of mine once said, this is somebody you know too, once said, real estate isn't the thing, it's the thing that gets me the thing.
Yes,
And
I like
think,
that.
I think for a long time, like I kind of fell out of love with like another property. We got another one, like I like what it does for me though.
Yes.
It's allowed my, it's changed my family tree, honestly. So I like all the things that it does for me, but I'm like falling out of love of like flipping another. After you've flipped hundreds of them, you're just like, whatever, another one, I mean, I still like the transformation, but like I was really into the real estate, like in the early years. And then now it's just like, it's the thing that gets me the thing,
That's well said.
And then another one was just changing with, sometimes you find yourself saying, I have to do something. I have to do this. I have to do that, is to start to say, I get to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get to, and sometimes, I mean, I find myself all the time also using this phrase, I'll be talking to someone like, well, this is a first world problem. Because it's like, I'm about to tell you something that sounds bad,
Yes.
but for the average person, it's not that bad. But
Yes. I agree. It's half the world doesn't have running water. It doesn't have clean water, right? And we take so many things for granted. I've got a pool out there. I used to complain that the guy would come and clean the pool for $150 a month. That's a home run. I don't have to sit there for hours cleaning the pool, and it only cost me $150. That should not be happy money. That should be ecstatic money. And now once you take a look at that, you start appreciating things. And that one thing, that one word in life that's called gratitude. If you're more grateful for the things you have in life, things start changing for you. You become more grateful, become more appreciative of life.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, one thing that a lot of people we throw this word around a lot, investor, like an investor, right? And what is an investor to you? What does that mean?
It's a dangerous term because people confuse what an investor in creating wealth really are. I think an investor is someone who masters a skill. But before one becomes an investor, they have to master themselves. You've seen people who go out and make a ton of money, they're investors, and then all of a sudden, a year later, they lose it, only to make it again, and then to lose it again. I think to me, an investor is someone who understands the vehicle that they're investing in. They're trying to limit their downside risk. They're seeing that there's value in what they're investing in, and they're trying to extrapolate and pull value from that investment. For me, I'm in multifamily. We are looking for the value add, material value add, whatever it is. We're looking for an asset that is underpriced, where we see that there's value that we can add to what we call the net operating income. If we can increase the net operating income of a property, we can increase the value, and we're looking for a future stream of revenue. That is what, to me, an investor is in multifamily. But ultimately, to me, before you even start investing, if you're listening to this, please, you need to build a foundation. You need to understand yourself. You need to understand what you like to invest in. Because Mike and Gino, we love real estate. Mike got into the single family, more transactional, a lot quicker. I got into multifamily. It's a lot slower. It's a lot more boring. It's more of a business systems model because I have to deal with a lot of property management. So you have to pick a vehicle that really suits your needs. I think Morgan Housel said it best in The Psychology of Money. To become a really good investor, you need to, number one, learn how to save money, because you've got to be able to save capital to be able to invest capital. And number two, you have to know what you like. You may like Bitcoin and trading crypto. To me, it's not an investment because I think an investment, you have to have some type of yield. I don't want to just invest for cap appreciation. That's me. I want some type of dividend alongside that yield, and that's what I think is multifamily is just phenomenal for. And I want tax benefits. I want the whole kit and caboodle. But if you're listening to this, understand what your money persona is. If you don't know that and you just start investing money, you may be making a big mistake and a big disservice to yourself.
Yeah. And I think that can change over time too, right? I mean,
Yes.
I've flipped hundreds of houses, primarily a single family guy, moved in heavy into multifamily 5 or 6 years ago. That's been pretty slow over the last couple of years. So we found that we're investing in the stock market of all places over the past couple of years because, the truth is my wife and I sat down and we talked a lot about we're 50, like what does our future look like here? And we're like, we just generally want to be more passive. And our multifamily is pretty passive. My single family rental portfolio, even though we don't manage them, not passive. Like I'm still getting pulled in all the time on stuff, houses burning down, evicting tenants. We've got notes, so we're foreclosing on people sometimes. There's still a lot of stuff that it's not really that passive. And we're like, you know what? The stock market really is passive. Now, the returns are not as high, but there's some truth to having, and there's some truth, we've been so all in on real estate for so long now that as we kind of look out a little ways, it's like, we need to be open to doing some other things that truly are more passive because that's where we want to get to ultimately. So that changes over time is my point.
Mike, but you made a great point. First of all, you're having the conversation with your wife. Most people don't have that hard conversation with their significant other, with their spouse, or with their kids. They don't understand the relationship. And what you said was great. Early on, you're all in on real estate because you need to create equity. You need to create wealth. Right? You don't do that. It's a lot harder to do that in the stock market with 6 or 7 or 10%. You can do that a lot easier or a lot quicker with real estate. So what you're doing is you're putting money into a vehicle. You're exiting that vehicle. You're taking those funds and you're putting into something that's a little less. It's a lot more passive. And I think you have the optionality to do that because you started sooner. If you're sitting here, you're in your late 40s and you're saying to yourself, I need to create money. I need to get some type of retirement going. Real estate's a great vehicle. It's not passive unless you've got capital to invest with other people. Then it can be more passive. But understanding what your goals are is another thing as an investor. What are you trying to accomplish? If you're in your 30s and saying, hey, I've got 30 years to retire, I just want to start putting some money into some passive real estate deals, great. But if you're 38 years old like me and you're like, man, my job sucks. I hate what I'm doing. I need to quit this thing in the next 5 years. There's a different strategy involved in that than just trying to go out and do it passively.
Yeah, for sure. It depends on where you're at for sure. And then what's also interesting is with real estate, you get to a point where you might have cash, but you don't need to use your own cash for deals. Like sometimes, I mean, the interest rates are different now, but when interest rates are lower and if you're raising money for deals or even on single family stuff, like I've had money for deals, but I just had great private lenders and stuff like that. So on hundreds and hundreds of deals, we very rarely used our own money, right? So it's kind of crazy. We're like borrowing money and we're like, well, what are we going to do with, and this sounds like a first world problem. It's like, I've got cash, where am I going to put it, right? And we just plowed it into rentals, single family, and then eventually we plowed it into multifamily. But you get to a point to where there's the operations pay for themselves and you have, again, first world problems here, excess cash, and you have to find some place to put it. And you got to find that place. It could be buying other businesses. It could be a lot of things, but it could be buying a ranch or a farm, right?
But Mike, you've got a great relationship with money because most people, when they get that kind of money, they don't know what to do with it. A lot of people like to spend. You sound like as if you're a saver. Your money persona is Mike the saver. I'm going to get the money. I'm going to be able to save it. But my first idea is where am I going to deploy it? I'm going to be also Mike the investor because we can have multiple personas. And if you understand that, you're saving the money, and then from there, building the foundation. What do I do next? I need to deploy the money. And most people deploy it into buying luxuries like Lambos. And like the farm. You can afford to buy the farm at this point in your life because you've got what we call baby money soldiers. You've earned a ton of money. Every dollar that's come into your life, you've earned that. And there's certain responsibilities or duties for your baby money soldiers. You're trying to multiply them by taking over more properties and creating more of them, right? The problem is people early on kill their baby money soldiers by using them on stupid things like luxuries, vacations, jewelry, cars. Once they're dead, they're off the table. But what you've done and what I've done successfully is, you know what? Let's defer that. Let's take them and buy another deal. And the money from that deal, let's not take that money out. We're going to reinvest it into another deal.
Yeah.
And then another deal. And then the compounding goes. And obviously, we put some in reserve. We have some as protection, but we keep going on. And then from there, we are actually living from our production. See, what Americans mostly do is they consume through their consumption. They don't consume through their production. What you and I have done, and what most wealthy people do, is they produce something, and from that production, they'll be able to go out and spend money. And that's how you create wealth, and that's how you continue to perpetuate wealth. Whereas most people, what they do is they consume and they go, oh, I've got some money, let me pay off my bills. Instead of saying, let me create something, let me build something, and off of this production, let me pull that money out and be able to go to use it on buying something. That's the difference, what I've seen over the last 10 or 15 years between someone who can become financially free and understands what money is and how to use money versus someone who's got like the sort of the lower, poor mentality or the middle class mentality where they're there. Let me save, or let me just, you know what, got money here, let me go and blow it instead of let me try to invest that money.
Yeah. Can that persona change? Like, let's talk to the people out there, because we know there's people that are listening to this, and we wish you well for sure. But those that like tend to like make really good money, but they never are really investing in they're like, they would probably say, man, I'm investing in my happiness, which is fine. You should. But like, how do you do that in a way to where that money has a much longer runway, right? But for those that are used to making good money and just kind of blowing it on toys or whatever, like, how can they change?
Well, this is the first podcast that I'm pitching the book. So I'm going to pitch the book because
let's see that book.
It's in Happy Money, Happy Family, Happy Legacy. And the first way to change anything is to become aware of it, to become aware of what you're doing. Most people are on autopilot. Most people don't know their relationship with money. Most people don't know their persona. You know, some people go out and blow money. Well, why is that? We have 4 happy chemicals. We have dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, and oxytocin. Dopamine is the drug that in your brain that says, man, I want to feel good. To some people, eating a piece of cheesecake makes them feel good. So they go and have a piece of cheesecake, dopamine hit. Some people like to gamble. Some people like to go spend money and just buy frivolous things. Feels great in the moment, but when that moment's over, it's like, why did I do that? And the cycle continues, and the cycle continues. If you're not aware of that, most people aren't aware of that, then they will truly never understand how to master that emotion or that effect. And I think the second part, honestly, is to have a real and honest conversation with yourself, to go back to yourself when you were 9 and 10 and 11 years old and hear what people were talking about in reference to money when you were younger. What did mom and dad say? Is everything too expensive? We can't afford it. Does money grow on trees? Are you saving for a rainy day? Or are they not even talking? Are they avoiding the conversation altogether? Is there always stress around it? And that will carry on into your adulthood. And then all of a sudden, you have that persona carry on. So you can change your persona, because I was more of a saver early on. I was younger. My parents were both immigrants. We had a restaurant, but we were very frugal. And I was always taught to save, save, save. And then when I understood, save to buy an asset, and that asset will pay for the event. Right? You're saving to buy a multifamily that will cash flow so I can put my kids through college. Instead of just purely saving, I understood the saver persona and the investor persona, right? And then once I understood that, and I understood what my relationship was, and I can have an honest conversation with myself and not feel bad for myself. Sometimes that saver mentality made me feel scarce. Like, I love to see that money in the bank. I love to see those zeros growing, but I don't want to touch that. I can't go out and buy a farm because that would kill me. But that was my relationship with money. So once I understood that, I started going through it, and I started doing a lot of work. It comes down to really personal development and mindset and working on it and wanting to work on it. When I had the pain of going through that restaurant and those years of unhappy money, I had to say, how do I, not knowing the word, but how do I get into something that I want to do, that I enjoy doing, and how do I create that wealth? And if I don't go back to my early years, when you really start creating your values at that age, and my values were save, 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 don't spend, be scarce, there's no abundance. If I continue to carry that on, I wouldn't be enjoying what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. You know what? I think another lesson, that kind of runs a parallel to this is understanding the opportunity cost of your time, right? Because we have very limited time, and I grew up in a very hard-working blue-collar family. It's kind of where I got my work ethic to work hard.
Yes.
But my family was more of the type that never outsourced anything. We're going to mow our own lawn, change our own oil, cut our own hair, like all that stuff. And you get to a point to where when you realize, when you start making some decent money, you're like, hey, my hourly rate is pretty high. Like, why am I doing $10 an hour work here and there? Because,
Mike,
it's like
how
one
hard
thing
was
to roll
that,
up your
though?
sleeves and just work hard. It's another thing to say, that's not a good use of my time. I should be spending it on stuff where I can make more money or make a
How
bigger
hard
impact.
was that, though? That must have been hard for you. You must have been around the right people to make you have that realization. Because if you're just a regular blue-collar person and all your friends do that and you're around that group, it's just normal. That's just the way life is. But it must have been challenging for you to say, hey, I can get a bookkeeper for $20 an hour instead of me banging away in QuickBooks. Or I can get somebody to edit this podcast instead of me doing it myself because I can save the money. Or a flip. You know what? I can paint the wall. I don't have to pay somebody $600. I can do it myself. And I think that's the hard part because you have such a relationship with how you've been taught versus there may be a better way to do it. And I don't think most people look for the better way to do it because their peer group is telling them, dude, come on. Classic example is firefighters. I love firefighters. They have such an incredibly difficult job, but a lot of them have second jobs. And a lot of them will do part-time stuff. But when you talk to them, it's like they're always like, that's too much money. I'll do it myself. Well, you're working a full-time, difficult job as it is. And then you're working part-time at other times. When are you ever home to like enjoy the family? Because you're out there trying to save a few $100 a week. And I get it. There's nothing wrong. But that mindset is pervasive, I think, in a lot of society now. It's like, look at your time and see what not your peer group, but what's the peer group that you want to emulate. If you want to get into that financially free, wealthy mindset, they're not cutting their grass unless they love it, unless it brings them happy money. If you sit on the mower and you freaking love it and it's not worried about the time, you're out there, different story. But if you're trying to save $20 an hour by cutting the grass, it's not where you should be putting your time and effort into.
Yeah. And I think especially, for me, it was after I became an entrepreneur, which was really 2008, right? It was like when you're working for somebody else, you're not thinking about, well, first off, when you work for yourself, you're not working 40 hours a week. You're probably working way more, right? But also you're like, then you start to balance time. Like this isn't a good use of my time.
Yes.
And I think the other thing that helped me is I'm pretty much just not good at many things. Like handy, like my parents were, my dad, my brothers, everybody's like really handy, good working with their hands.
Yes.
I was like, even hanging a picture, like I screw that up somehow. So I'm like, if you're just not good at anything, you kind of realize I need to find somebody else to do this anyway. And it kind of works out, I guess.
I got a funny story. A couple weeks ago, my wife was like, can you show me how to do this online, this computer thing? I'm like, I don't know how to do it. She goes, what do you mean you don't know how to do it? I said, Julia, you told me 5 years ago to start delegating things and not worrying about it, not learning how to do it. And she goes back to me, well, you should know how to do it. I'm taking your advice. You told me not to do it. So I'm like, I'm listening to you. I don't know how to do it. And I think if you can really, part of the happy money thing is if you can really find what you really love to do and show up and do that, I think the money and the results will show up even more dramatically in your life.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Gino, what do you think is going on with the current market? I know none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen here. We don't know what's going to happen with interest rates or whatever. I think with the new administration in place that, America just got a lot more business friendly, I think. We're going to find out with time. But, where do you foresee things going here over the next year or two even?
Mike, if we go back the last couple of years, I want to ask you a question, honestly. Has it felt like there's been stagflation? Like nothing really going on? Things are really slow. No one's really talking about that. Everyone's talking about all these numbers. They come out high, then they revise them downward. I don't believe any of the data, to be completely honest with you. I think we've been in a recession for the last 2 years. I think a regular recession, not numbers or GDP driven, because there's so much money pumped into the system. But if you look at housing, even in Florida over the last 12 months, it's down. Multifamily hit a high in 2022. It's down 22% since then. Cap rates have started decompressing. I think they're going to continue to decompress. We're probably 20% off where prices should be conservatively in a good market. So I think prices have to continue to drop to actually make these debt coverage ratios work. Bridge debt is not the answer. That's what people were doing 2 and 3 years ago. We always practiced and preached long-term fixed rate financing. But as you know, it was really hard to get a deal in 2022 and early 23 doing that. But no deal is better than a bad deal. That said, going forward, I still think there's going to be inflation unless they cure this spending. And if you've got high inflation, the Fed's not going to cut rates because the Fed's biggest job is to take care of, well, inflation is really an increase in the supply of money. The result of inflation really is prices going higher, and we've seen that. And anyone who thought inflation was transitory back in 2021 should not have a job. They should have all lost their jobs because that was the biggest scam ever. We should have dropped rates a lot, pushed rates up a lot quicker, sooner. But I think if you're going forward in the next 12 months, if you're thinking about getting into real estate, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Now is the time because you need to make relationships with brokers. You need to start talking to investors because the deals will come. We keep talking about this debt crisis, this debt, reset going on in November. There's going to be a lot of debt coming due in November. They keep kicking the can down the road. And I don't think by the end of this year, rates are going to come down enough. So there's going to be a lot of deals there's going to be a lot of LP equity that's going to be written down. I think banks are going to be taking back some of these deals. I think there's going to be some real, I don't want to call them short sales, but if you bought a deal for $10 million and you've got $2 million of LP equity in there, really, you can sell it for $8 million, lose all your investors' capital, and get out of the deal. I think a lot of that's going to happen. I really do. I see it because there's a lot of markets right now that there is an oversupply. You've got a lot of multifamilies that are coming online, but once they come online, there's not a lot of supply of building going on after the supply is burned out. Right. So there's this weird area where if you can hold on, but at the same time, I think the one great area in multifamily is if you can get into these newer assets where there's developers who have to sell these assets. They're finishing them up. They haven't leased them out yet because there's a lot of concessions in the market. If you can go in and buy these newer assets right now, we bought 2 of them last year. We're on the verge of getting another one this year because developers, they built them. They're in for a good basis because they probably got the land at a good price. And now they're on another project because that's what they do. They build until they go bankrupt. And now they're on another project. They've got a liquidity problem, so they're selling this asset that they're trying to lease up. That's where I think the opportunity is in the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, that's great. And I have another friend, or one of my partners, that does some of that in the multifamily too. And one of the things that he said is a lot of the builders, they're not trying to maximize rent either. They're just trying to get butts in seats, if you will. They're trying to get those things leased up so they can say they have a 90+% occupancy, right? Even if it's not the best rate. So as a savvy investor, if you're a good operator, you can come in and get the rents up too, right?
Mm-hmm. And you're looking at these like brand new builds at, let's say, $200,000 a unit or $250,000 a unit. It would take Jake and myself 3 years plus to build something like that. So we have 3 years worth of risk. And then like you're saying, these developers, they should probably go out and partner up with a property management company because they're leaving fees on the table. They're leaving lower rents. They're leaving, obviously this whole way to manage these assets, their expenses are a lot higher than what they should be. So you've got valuation through operation. The whole mantra was valuation through renovation these last 5 or 6 years. Now we're looking at the operational side of the business, and like these developers, they've left a lot of that money on the table for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, Gino, show us that book one more time. So hot off the presses here. Tell us what's it called one more time. Read it out.
Happy Money, Happy Family, Happy Legacy. Because for me, trying to create that happy money will lead to a happier family where you can sit around and discuss money. Don't avoid the situation of money. And then ultimately how to create a happy legacy through your happy money, through the happy family, and not just focus on the financial legacy, but let's focus on what you want to leave as far as your values to the next generation.
Yeah, awesome. How do people get that book? Get it on Amazon?
Amazon. Yep, go to Amazon.
I do. It's every day's Christmas for me on Amazon. I get
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I just got bolt cutters. I go to Amazon for everything now. A year ago, I just you know what, just go right there. It's the easiest place to get anything.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, and you get it the next day. So awesome. Well, everybody, if you want to learn how to connect with Gino, just check down below in the show notes here. We'll have everything. Gino, great to see you, buddy. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right, have a great day. Everybody, we'll see you on the next show. Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.